If you want something you've never had, you must do something you've never done. The Renegade cohort for 2024 is open, but it won't be open for very long. Head to renegadeaccelerator.com and apply today. Today, we have Nicole Rex on the Why Not Now show. Nicole is the Vice President of Global Marketing Campaigns at Dell Technologies. She and I have been working together in conjunction with her leader, Liz Matthews, who oversees all of global brand and marketing. And we've been renegading our way together through their entire organization. And Nicole and I today discuss some of the tactics, some of the strategies, the literal how-tos of finding a new way to work, to really change what our days look like so they work for us. So we're reinventing the workday. We're saving time, saving money, and even in cases, really allowing talent to shine more and focus on their well-being, but also, this impacts the bottom line. So that is what our conversation is all about today. You'll hear how, and you'll hear what the results are. And hopefully this gives you some ideas on how you can get more time back into your day to spend it more intentionally so it works for you. We're talking meetings, we are talking communication, all of the things. You will hear how this is all being rethought and redone. Without further ado, here is Nicole Rex, Vice President at Dell Technologies. Ms. Nicole Rex, I'm so excited to have you on the show. Welcome to the Why Not Now show.
Thank you so much. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We will have some fun. So in the spirit of Why Not Now, can you tell me about a time when you had a big decision to make and you asked yourself, why not now?
Oh boy, this one actually goes back to the pandemic. And I was just kind of looking around and going, wow, where can I get inspiration during this time? Just for myself, but also if I don't have inspiration, how am I going to inspire a whole team? And it really got me thinking, what kind of leader do people need right now? And so that kind of became sort of, I would call it my baseline. Why not now? I've had iterations since then, but it all just came back to, how can I be the leader that people need at this very moment?
And I remembered this time too, because we were having conversations and that systemic question of what type of leader is needed right now then took you to another question, and you arrived at kind of that next level of a strategy. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, yes. So I was, as marketers, it always starts with research. And I was looking into corporate specifically. I really wanted to understand why people want to come and work in corporate. I've got employer brand on my team where we look for the future team members of Dell. And I was a little taken back by what I was finding in terms of some of the statistics kind of pointing to people wanting to go work for larger companies is going down. Meanwhile, the rise of entrepreneurship and small business, even medium business, people wanting to go work in those organizations was on the rise. And so it got me thinking again, well, goodness, what do we need to do? Because I love corporate. I love where I work. I want everybody to know the benefits. And I started thinking, who can help me with this? And it was actually a conversation with you, Amy Jo, where I was talking about kind of early in my career, like what I was looking for and what I wanted when I looked for an organization. And one of the things that people always told me was, well, you can do this, but you're a little too nice. And no matter where I went, that's what I always heard. So I started doing even more research back then around, well, what do I need to read? What books can I get my hands on so that I'm, I guess, not so nice anymore? And, and it got me thinking, well, wait a minute. I'm looking at kind of all these books that are about changing yourself. How do you change? How do you change to fit in? And I kind of got to the conclusion of, wait a minute, like, why are we working so hard to change ourselves when it really should be the other way around? We really need to rebrand this. We need to reinvent this. We need to rebrand corporate. We need to reinvent the way we look at work. And why can't we make work work for us? So let's start by reinventing our workday and let's see what we can do differently to really kind of make it work for us so that we can bring our authentic selves to work.
I love that journey that you just took us through because, you know, we look at branding and at first I remember when it was like, yeah, we need to rebrand corporate. We need to rebrand corporate. Corporate is not a dirty word.
No,
And then we discussed more and more how would we do that? It's not an external thing. This is not a branding, marketing, visual identity by any means. It is an internal look, right? It starts on the
it
inside with
starts on the inside. It's like the whole beauty on the inside, beauty on the outside. It starts with the inside. And if you don't fundamentally change that, then you're just putting a band aid on it versus really changing at the root level.
absolutely. And with Renegade and having these discussions of what do we need, it's interesting to look at, the progression and those steps that were taken. So we did arrive at that reinventing the workday and certain tactics to it, but time and communication and mindset, huge. But that psychological safety with your team, I think that's really what was necessary to make some of these big shifts, which I really would love to talk through, some of those tactics. But
Yeah.
otherwise, it's hollow. It will never work, right?
That 100%. And after going through Renegades myself, I was so fortunate to have my incredible boss, Liz Matthews, introduce me to you, Amy Jo, introduced me to Renegades. Our whole team went through it. I know kind of what a game changer it was for me. And I wanted to go deeper. So the psychological safety that you were talking about, I wanted to see how do I really, for real, create that. I think we were in good shape. I think we had it, but how do we leverage it more from people really kind of showing up, speaking out, using their voice, feeling confident, owning their journey, um, knowing that they're empowered to really make their day their own and make work work for them. And so that's the journey that we've been most recently on. Reinventing work can't just be about me doing it, it has to be all of us. So that is the journey that we've been on. And we've really kind of hit on an amazing framework that's given us some pretty incredible tactics and tangibility to really changing things.
It has. It has. And it couldn't be a more perfect time, right? We're in the perfect storm. We have AI is here, as you would
Oh
say,
man, is it ever?
on the scene. And how do you say, hold my beer?
And I always say, yes, it's like exactly because if you think about what we've all been through, I started my Why Not Now in 2020 during the pandemic. And I thought that was going to be a big deal. And it was. It was a devastating time. It was a time of opportunity. It was a time of just deep, deep stuff happening. But then when I really think about these past almost 4 years, we had the pandemic and we all learned how to work remotely. And then when things were starting to get better, we were like, okay, we can go into the office a little bit more. And we got used to kind of doing that a little bit more. We were doing the hybrid thing. And then things got really better and we were able to return to work, more. And all these changes then led to, okay, we're doing good. Yeah, we made it through the change. And all of a sudden, here comes AI. And AI is like, you know what, everybody, hold my beer because I'm about to really show you some change. So, I mean, the point is that change is never going to stop. And just when we think it's like the biggest change ever, here bigger change comes. So if we aren't thinking about that, if we aren't thinking about how can I constantly reinvent and think about what I want my workday to look like, we're not going to be equipped with the tools that we need to handle all this change.
Absolutely. It's so dynamic. We have AI, mental health, multiple generations working together. Sometimes that could just be an SNL skit, right?
I'm shocked it hasn't happened. You heard it here. It needs to be a skit.
Here's an idea. But then even supply chain and we went from, the great resignation to and quiet quitting to a shift in macroeconomics, global economics quickly. And so we're so used to this dynamic change, but we're not necessarily used to reinventing ourselves. And that's where I'd love to spend some time because,
Yeah.
you know, Renegade is all about reinvention and especially our relationship with time and money. And let's talk about time. As we now have been working together for several years, we know two ingredients in terms of the science of happiness: perceived control and perceived progress. And a lot of people right now feel fatigued by meetings, overwhelmed by the inbound communication. So let's talk through a couple of tactics that we implemented, and this was only possible because of that psychological safety foundation that we set together. So I love the example and case study of your global campaigns, meeting and kind of tour roadshow that you're known for doing probably internally, and how we rethought that.
Yes. Yeah. No, happy to. We all know we're not getting more time. So, how do you repurpose it in the way that works best for you? And one of the things that we did, we call it the hyper syndicated video meeting. So there was one meeting in particular, and this happens kind of every year within our organization where we do a lot of planning for the next year and then we lock on our strategy. And then it becomes a road show. It's almost this, you're going on the road and you're touring and you're really letting everybody know what the strategy is. And the thing is that you're
Internally.
saying internally. Yes, internally. And on the Zoom highway, it's not literally kind of going, but we have a lot of Zooms with different teams around marketing. So this year was no different. I started to get a lot of requests for, hey, can you come to my staff? Can you come to my all hands meeting and share what the campaign strategy is going to be for next year? And I had probably about 9 different people reach out. And so you can imagine how much time that was going to take if I literally went to every single meeting and basically I was saying the same thing at every one. So instead, we recorded it and we did it once. And then anybody who asked for it were able to send the link. And of course, if people have questions, they can reach out. But if you imagine the amount of hours saved, it was quite a lot. And that was just with one meeting. So if we can take that philosophy of record once and get it out, then the time that we are able to save is pretty incredible.
It's so true. I think we calculated 637 hours total time saved from this one example. And that's because everybody else in attendance too, chief of staff there potentially as well. Then, you know, executive assistants scheduling with others and the back and forth and back and forth and the prep for everything. So what I love about this though is now other people, the recipients, get to watch during their own time on demand. Maybe they're on a walk listening. Maybe they're listening in the car just to the audio. It's really giving everybody more time back and flexibility. And then, really thinking through, this wasn't a big feedback loop situation. You weren't really, this was done, this was locked, and campaign is out the door. So questions, sure, but this isn't really up for debate at this point. Those types of meetings, right?
Right. And I think that also goes back to the intention of why you're gathering and what the meeting is for. That also saves time because, to your point, if something's baked and there's not going to be a lot of back and forth, why not record it? And if you do have questions, I actually think it's more meaningful to hop on the phone with just a few people or just a one on one and talk through from the other person's perspective. They get a one on one to kind of go deep and really kind of make it all about them and what they want to know. So it works both ways.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And maybe it's a voice note if they have a question. Speaking of which,
We love our voice notes. Yeah, that's actually one of our time saving tactics that we do. Now we ask ourselves, we've been very intentional. Can this be a voice note? Can this be a text? Can this be just to pick up the phone? Or does it need to be a meeting? We're always asking ourselves, does this need to be a meeting? And the voice note I particularly love because you still get to hear the person's voice. And I think there's something about you can kind of see you can tell their excitement, or you can tell when maybe things are off. In a text, maybe you can't do that. So we've really loved kind of the 3-minute voice message where we can still kind of get the emotion and where the people are coming from but we're not sitting in a 30-minute meeting. That's been huge for us as well.
It's amazing because that time during the day when we look at our calendar and we see blocks and it's all meeting to meeting to meeting, that means we're kind of in that busy work spinning, actually not able to get deep work done. So from a 30-minute meeting or an hour meeting to a 3-minute voice note, it's been incredible to see the amount of capacity we've opened up. And I love the example of, the your team member who leads social, Vilma. She was able to use that time as well as the tools of how to protect her calendar's integrity and create an incredible piece of work, a powerful asset that wasn't planned, taking on a life of its own within a trend that was happening at the moment. Results were incredible, zero cost, saved so much time, and she enjoyed it. That's the stuff. That's where we want to be playing, right?
That's where that deep work and also, quite frankly, more enjoyable sometimes too. Look, we're never going to escape busy work. I mean, that's just a part of it. But if we can really start to go on the spectrum closer to that deep thinking, closer to the more meaningful work, it truly has an impact on bottom line.
Absolutely. Impact on bottom line and well being. Like, hi, that's the bullseye right there, right?
That's where I want to be. That's the kind of work environment that I want to be a part of. Yeah.
Saving time, saving money, and, encouraging talent to really expand and stretch in those areas of where they're uniquely qualified because that's AI can't replace that, right? Those human skills.
No, humanity is one of those things where that's at the center. That's at the center of what we do. And at Dell, that's what we're all about. Yes, it is about innovative technology and being on the forefront. But if we're not really empowering human potential, then what are we doing? We're not going to create technology just for technology's sake. And so I'm seeing some really, really powerful examples of that with my own team in terms of just using their humanity and thinking differently. And it's really having an impact across the well being and across the business.
The future of technology is the future of humanity. And this is something that Dell has had at the forefront for a very long time, right? Your literal vision mission is centered around human progress. And so it's a very exciting time. What I'd love to talk a little bit about is healthy tension. So we have some renegade kind of strategic language that you and your team have adopted that has really stuck, which is hard to do in the size of the organization that you have. And we eat healthy tension for breakfast, right? Because it opens doors and it creates time. This is one thing that, whether it's a healthy tension situation or conversation, we've talked a lot about because it's part of the renegade way.
Mhm.
Can you share a little bit about how you've basically been daring your team to make you mad?
I did put out that dare, didn't I? Yeah, as part of the healthy tension conversation, as part of saying, no, I'm not going to go to that meeting because it's not valuable. It's true. I did put a dare out to the team and just say, try to make me mad. Try to have a healthy tension conversation with me and see if I get mad. And so that has been happening, and there's been a couple of examples, just with people pushing back on me, which I have loved. There was a recent scenario where I was just kind of doing my thing about, let's go faster, we can do this faster, and talking about timelines, and let's go do this. And one of my leaders, she raised her hand and she said, absolutely, we should go faster. How about we also get some outside in perspective on what other companies are doing? Let's really understand where we're failing and maybe where we're doing some things right. Maybe we're not as broken. And I just loved that moment because, that's the healthy part of the tension conversation. She didn't shut it down, but she offered a whole nother diverse perspective. And if she wouldn't have done that, then we wouldn't have gotten that outside in perspective. So we're seeing those types of examples. And I even, we talked to the team about even say it. Just say, hey, you know what? I'm about to kind of go into the healthy tension category. And everybody knows it's like, all right, let's get ready. But it's almost a language that we have to take the awkwardness out of a what can sometimes maybe an awkward or tension conversation. But that tension is where the innovation lives and where diversity of opinion lives. And it's just so important to really, really lean into it.
Absolutely. And it's one thing to say it, but another to almost promote it. So by you sharing these examples with your own team, they're like, oh, I can challenge her because that was someone that, you are her leader and she was willing to bring this up.
And guess what? I didn't get mad.
No, we have yet to see that. I don't think that's probably around the corner. But I think the framework of how that happens is so key because it's rooted in respect. It's rooted in kindness. We always say direct and kind.
Mhm.
They can coexist at the same time. Clear is kind because it saves us time. And speaking of the time and just boundaries, I'm on this kick lately that, balance is BS, but boundaries is where it's at, right? Um, and this no fly zone. So, as we're working together, and I love kind of sharing for anyone listening, how would you implement this in your own team, whether it's a team of two or three, or it's a team of what, like 130,000? And it's all down to that experimentation and the testing of the execution and the iterate, right? Listening to that feedback loop. So, as we look at that, one of the things that I really appreciate about you is the willingness to go into the unknown. So when we say, well, can you have no fly zones on your calendar? And we had that discussion, and you said, well, we kind of already unofficially kind of do in certain times and places, but let's make it real and make it stick.
Exactly. We love our no fly zone Fridays. And what this is all about is, yeah, Monday through Thursday, like we are like, yes, we have meetings. Of course we have meetings. Um, but sometimes maybe we just don't have that amount of time to truly do the deep work, the deep thinking, really stop and just be able to think. So on Fridays, we always kind of say, all right, let's land that plane and let's really try to avoid having meetings. Use that time to really recoup, refresh, do the deep work, maybe catch up on things that you weren't able to do. So at least we know every week we at least have one time where it's sacred and we know that we can use that for the things that maybe we don't get to the rest of the week.
It's amazing how much of a relief that is, where this isn't just a cute little, oh, we blocked this part on our calendar or day, but everybody knows they're going to reschedule over or they're going to schedule over it. Or it's
And there's a respect too in terms of, and I find that we'll ask one another, because look, sometimes you can't get around it. Of course, maybe you have to have a conversation, but at least we're stopping and we're thinking and saying things like, hey, I don't want to interrupt your deep thinking time or your catch up time, but is it okay if blah blah blah? So I just noticing that getting us thinking about how we can protect our calendar in that way has been so significant and a huge help.
absolutely. And let's touch on kind of the meeting, we'll call it pact or code, that has started to evolve that we're adding a little more structure around because that's kind of how it works. See what's sticking, see what's working when we experiment. But before we do that, it's just so important to note that everything you're doing is connected, right? So I'm in this season right now too. I call it the ruthless red pen. Like, what can I strike? What can I get rid of off the list that doesn't need my attention and time, that because I want to stay in at capacity. When an airplane is,
Yes.
operating efficiently at altitude, it requires less fuel. It's where it's supposed to be. So without that, we wouldn't be able to find the time in our calendar for no fly zone Fridays, right? And without being able to say no to something, whether it's even to ourselves, sometimes healthy tension is in ourselves or each other. It's like, oh, so it's all very connected, but so tactical to the point where I love When the meeting filter, right? So when we're asked to join a meeting, what are the two questions? Am I adding value?
Am I adding value? Am I getting value? So it's really become a mantra within our team. So if you're going to meetings and you're not adding value or getting value, you probably shouldn't go.
Yeah. Am I adding value? Am I getting value? And if the answer is no, don't go.
Don't go.
And that's an invite. That's a ask forgiveness instead of permission. I dare you. But it makes it so much more efficient, and it's such a relief to our well-being if we know for a fact it's not necessary for me to go. It's like, great, go work on something that is necessary, right?
And by the way, a lot of meetings are recorded. So if there is something that perhaps you missed, you can go back and listen. But that's a big one. Make sure you're adding value or getting value before you go to any meeting.
Renegades. The next Renegade cohort is open for enrollment, but it will not be open for very long. Head to renegadeaccelerator.com. This is our 11th cohort. We are so excited because we have women all over the world in every single industry, in every sector, female leaders, executives, founders, you name it. The amount of leverage and the amount of intellectual capital being exchanged is pretty incredible. Head to renegadeaccelerator.com to apply, and we'll explore together to see if this is a good fit for you. You might have been tracking over the last couple of years, and a lot of things have changed and developed within Renegade. We've grown. What hasn't changed is our fierce commitment to each other's goals. We still have a strong foundation in helping you build your personal brand online and offline so you can get more out of it, so you can get more out of your days, because getting up earlier and earlier is not a strategy. However, we've added to that. For example, public speaking is a huge way to leverage your personal brand and thought leadership. Not only do we focus on helping you become a better public speaker, but also the business side of public speaking, where you get paid and you get to increase your fee and those opportunities to get on bigger stages. That's what we're all about. Last year alone, we had Renegades take hundreds of stages, and we're so proud of them. In addition, we are getting women seats on cap tables as investors, board seats, and those spots on stages, which really increases your voice of authority as well as your ability to create your own wealth. We are educating about investment, providing access to deal flow that you typically wouldn't have, and opportunities to invest through Renegade Global Ventures. So we're democratizing the process and the access to deal flow, but also democratizing the flow of capital. It's so exciting. This has all become possible because the amount of leverage and power within this container at Renegade. We also have a Renegade multifamily office, which you have access to in partnership with Raymond James. Incredible benefits there. And in addition, you have access to each other, meaning this is not one to many or one to one, it's many to many. Exponential opportunity for growth and leverage, introductions, new business, opportunities, and feedback, experience. Those are all part of what we offer at Renegade. So head to renegadeaccelerator.com and check out if you feel like it's for you. We'd love for you to apply and touch base with you soon. Looking at cameras on, cameras off. So this is a big thing, as we all know, and we've experimented and really started playing more with your team on walking meetings, right? And what I love about standing walking meetings is that it's very difficult to multitask if you are on a walking meeting, right? Because if you're in a different country or you are, not there present in the physical space with the other meeting participant, then you can't really be answering your email, walking, talking, listening at the same time. And so it also gives us the ability to stretch our legs. And we know what happens with our brain chemistry when we're moving.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And again, it gives somebody a choice. It gives them ownership over how they're spending their day, getting out, having a micro break. Yeah, they're still talking, they're still interacting, but they're able to walk. They're able just to get the blood flow going. So, huge fan of like being intentional about, hey, when do we really need to have cameras on? And maybe when we don't need to.
Absolutely. And it's okay to put that in the title of the meeting invite. CA, cameras, sorry, not CA, CO, cameras on.
CO, co, yes.
Or, I can't remember what it's CR, cameras requested or cameras off, I guess, or the two. Anyway, you can make up your own, you know, abbreviation, but that helps with planning purposes, right?
It
So if you
does.
know you're in
It does.
transit,
Well, and it goes to intention because if you're really having to ask yourself for a meeting, do I want cameras on? Um, Also, another one of our rules is no agenda, no meeting. So then you yourself are holding yourself accountable for having a more outcomes based meeting because you're already thinking about are the cameras going to be on? What is the agenda? Um, so and also I think it goes both ways too in terms of when you do have cameras on, it automatically is about engagement. People know, okay, this is going to be a meeting where there's going to be heavy, heavy engagement that goes on. Because there's actually nothing worse than being the only one on camera and you're just speaking to a bunch of pictures. That doesn't really create the most engaging type of meeting.
agreed, agreed. And we're constantly talking about our personal brands are really shining when we decide if we want cameras on or off and how we, are carrying ourselves, even if we're listening versus, or maybe it really matters. And you owe it to yourself and your teammates to, if you're going to be there. Otherwise, don't.
Again, are you adding value or getting value?
Exactly. So as you look at this as a leader and a large amount of responsibility, how are you measuring this? How are you deciding if this is worth the intention and effort? And what does that look like?
Yeah, no, KPIs, we're marketers. So KPIs are always our key performance indicators are huge. So there's a few indicators that I'm looking at. Accountability and ownership. So really taking ownership of what your day looks like. I understand there's some things that will always be out of our control, but look at for those pockets of opportunity where you can really make it your own. And there's also a notion around confidence. So we've actually measured confidence in the survey, and we have seen an improvement of people feeling like they can greenlight their own ideas. They're feeling more empowered. And back to the social post that you mentioned earlier that we saw so much success with, that was about saving time. And it was also about confidence. It was about owning it. They did that without anybody really knowing what they were doing. And they showed it to me when it was done. And I was like, this is amazing. And it performed. So, really kind of ownership, accountability, the confidence factor. And then I would say the fourth thing is I'm looking at kind of the bottom line of like what the impact on the business. And anecdotally, like we have seen some of these projects really have a true impact on our performance as a team. So it's not, yes, I want everybody to love their workday, love where they work, get joy out of, every day. But we're also looking at what kind of impact does that have on the business and our work that we do.
Absolutely. And we see that, I always think of the cruise ship versus speedboat analogy and all of this entire operating system and that Renegade way is allowing for such a big, incredibly powerful organization to have these pockets of agility and acting like a speedboat to get things done more efficiently. And it's happening, even when we look at whether it's partners or the time to brief and discuss and the amount of meetings for a project and the production and versus someone saying, "Hey, I could do this right now." And then they go do it. It really does. We're talking bottom line.
Yeah, and it's that entrepreneurship, like we know about entrepreneurship, but it's incredible to see my team be intrapreneurs and really feeling like they are empowered to go bring a lot of this stuff to life and make a difference.
It is. And I know you talk a lot about, leadership as a network versus a hierarchy and kind of like change leadership versus change management. And that's the way as we watch closely, this is not a top down. This is a one to many to one, many to many. But it is important that leadership has fully embraced the daily practice, right? Because seeing is believing, but I think that's really important. You don't necessarily have to be a VP or exec or it doesn't work that way. It won't work.
No, it really doesn't, and there are back to kind of the diverse points of view and thought. There are things that every single person in my organization are seeing that I'm not, or that their boss is not. And if we don't hear from them, how can we really be better or how can we really innovate? So we do talk a lot about our organization being a network, not necessarily a hierarchy. There's nothing wrong with hierarchy. We need those frameworks within large organizations. But when it comes to what ideas do you have? How can you be empowered to make it happen? How can you move without having to get a bajillion different approvals? It really can be a game changer with an organization to be kind of more of those speedboats versus the big old cruise ship. And that is because of the network that we have.
It's pretty special to witness, and the mindset being open to, and quarterly reports that we're questioning. Do we really need that deck anymore? Is that necessary? Could we do this differently? So, what has been the biggest surprise about this process?
Oh, gosh, that's a great question. I think one of the biggest surprises, I'll call it kind of the Wizard of Oz factor. Dorothy, you had it in yourself all along. So, as we know the story, Dorothy is trying to find the people who can help her get back home, the wizard who can help her, the magic. And it was inside of her all the time to make it happen. And so there's one thing when I, went through my Renegades journey, I saw that within myself. But it is still a little amazing and surprising when you start to see it in others. I've seen so many people have this aha moment of, wait a minute, I can do that. I can cancel that meeting. I can repurpose time to do something more potent and meaningful. So yeah, I think that's the surprise is seeing it in other people. And that's been a real joy too, just to see that spark take off.
It's fascinating. And back to that perceived control and the ownership, seeing individuals realize, yeah, I do have control over my not only day, but changing, we call it renegading your IDP, your individual development plan, where they're reinventing what their roles are in some cases and saying, hey, what do you think? I'd love to do this. I think this makes sense because of this, and this. And it's ownership and having control over your own career and future.
Yeah, and we've actually had probably I think 6 or 7 people now that have really kind of rethought what their role should be, and that because of that psychological safety, because of the Renegade way, they've spoken up, and a lot of them have changed their roles because it made sense. And again, back to sometimes people don't see what I see or their leader sees, and so they bring those ideas to the table. So yeah, it's just been an incredible thing to witness for sure.
And those are the heartbeats of the brand, right? The people, the humans. That's amazing. Well, there are 2 stories that I'm just itching for you to share. So as you went through Renegade and we talk about go-to stories and that storytelling process, which is a superpower, rocket fuel for brands and individuals, especially as AI continues to join the party, because it's that human connection can't be replaced. And I have 2 in my back pocket that I'd love for you to consider sharing. We could go Tom Cruise or a pocket full of joy.
Oh, 2 good ones. 2 good ones. Okay, well, you know what? I will start with the one that usually gets people's ears perked up, which is the Tom Cruise one.
The time you dated Tom Cruise?
The time I practically dated Tom Cruise. So yeah, okay, so I'm taking you way back. I'm taking you way back to my high school days. And one of my passions back then, in addition to telling stories and being in marketing, which I love, back then I was a baton twirler. So that was kind of my superpower. I loved twirling. And my twirling teacher called my parents and they said that there was this movie that was filming in town and they were looking for extras who could twirl a baton. And would I want to go and audition? And of course, the answer is yes. But my parents were real sticklers for skipping school, and nothing was good enough, to warrant skipping school. So that took some influencing, but they actually agreed. So they agreed to get me to the audition, even though it was during the school day. And when we showed up, I was so excited. I had all told my friends I was going to be in this movie. It was going to be amazing. And then I show up, and the lady at the check-in counter is like, "Oh, I'm sorry, sweetheart. Those auditions were over an hour ago. You missed it." So unfortunately, my parents, they got the time wrong, and these are people that are never late. But there I was. And so they said, "You know what, we'll take your number. Maybe there'll be something that pops up." And sure enough, in 3 months, I get a call. There's another opportunity. It wasn't for twirling the baton, but it was about being an extra in a movie called Born on the 4th of July, featuring Mr. Tom Cruise. And I had no idea what I was showing up for, but all of a sudden they get me all dressed up in this like 50s costumes. I sit in a booth with these other extras, and the people across from me, their eyes start to get really big and they're like, "Don't look back." They're looking at me going, "Don't look back, don't look back." And I'm like, "What is it?" Tom Cruise sits right behind me. His head is literally right behind my head. I was freaking out. Of course, you don't talk to the actors. So I did my part. I was, really good. But then we had lunch. And so to get to the place where we had to get lunch, we had to go through this area of production where they had these massive rolls of wires that you kind of had to crawl over. And so I have never been on a film set before. I didn't know how to maneuver. So I was trying to step over these wires. And all of a sudden, here comes Tom Cruise. He extends out his hand and he says, "May I help you?" And I was like stunned. I didn't say a thing. But of course, I did grab Tom Cruise's hand and he did help me over those wires. And so forever, I will say that I dated Tom Cruise. The true story is that I held hands with Tom Cruise.
I love that.
The whole point of this story is, just when you think you've missed out on an opportunity. I wanted to twirl so bad in that movie. Guess what? I never would have met Tom Cruise. He wasn't a part of that scene. So you never know when something better is around the corner. And that's why I love that story, because you just never know.
I love it too. Such a good story. And I think that's where, when we look at accepting, but also being active in our lives, right? It's that constant like dance. Yes, I accept this and I'm still very much taking action. And it's that beautiful dance.
And the Tom Cruise story is so applicable. You're right, Amy, because like I'm going through stuff right now that it's like one door closes and you're sad about it, but then another one opens and it's even better.
Yes, yes. I recently met a gentleman. He had had a massive heart attack fairly recently. And I said, "What was the number one lesson that you learned from that experience?" And he said, "I learned that I have choices, not challenges." And I'll never forget that.
That's huge.
It was big because there, we're definitely going to continue to experience some great challenges, but we do get the choice of how we want to respond, and we can control what we can control, right? We'll focus on that, and focus on that. With Renegade, I'd love to, in the spirit of why not now, ask you a few rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Oh, I love it. Yes.
Okay. When I say the word renegade, what's the first thing you think about?
Opportunity versus challenge. So we talk a lot about being obsessed about opportunity. You can be obsessed about the challenge or obsessed about the opportunity. So how can you be obsessed about the opportunity? And then I also think that renegades are not afraid to break the rules in a healthy way. So, because we're so obsessed about opportunity, it's like maybe we need to think of different angles on how to get there.
Yeah, the good kind of trouble, positive disruption, right?
Yes.
When you think of the word renegade, who comes to mind?
Well, you obviously.
That
Uh,
was not a loaded question, although thank you, a compliment. Does anyone else pop into mind?
oh my goodness, there's so many actually of my fellow renegades. Shout out to Cheryl. Shout out to Michelle. Um, that just these incredible group of women that are renegading on a daily basis. I'm also going to throw out my parents. I think I didn't even know that I was being raised by renegades, but I think they were always kind of looking at things differently. They would step out of line when they needed to. So just like they let me go to the audition with Tom Cruise, I think that's a great example of like a healthy breaking of the rules. So I'll throw my parents in there too.
That's amazing. And you are an absolute corporate renegade. And we have to acknowledge, I'd say, Liz Matthews, because
Oh, Liz Matthews is like the ultimate renegade.
right, and really bringing it's not easy to make up new rules or guidelines inside of, such a big organization that is used to a certain way, for a long time. So that's amazing. And what's one app you can't live without?
Oh, my Sleep IQ app from Sleep Number Bed. Every morning, I open up that app to see about my quality of sleep. I know that doesn't sound super exciting, but I'm kind of obsessed with quality of sleep, not just the length, but like how I'm sleeping. And this Sleep Number Bed, I promise I'm not getting paid for this. They measure your heart rate, they measure how many times you wake up, if you got out of bed. So I do that every day. I have another one too that I really love, which is Canva. I love the Canva app. You can quickly just spit out all sorts of different creative and presentations, etc. So I love Canva too.
Nice, nice. That's a good one. Uh, describe Dell in one word.
Innovative.
There you go. There you go. What's your absolute favorite time saving tool?
Calendar auditing, calendar editing, anything that I do this every yeah, that's it. The red pen. I love to edit time. So again, that may not sound exciting, but I actually love it. So I'm constantly kind of going into my calendar, blocking things, seeing what maybe doesn't have to be a meeting. It's very fluid. At the same time, also blocking your calendar and getting time on to make sure that you're doing what's most potent, what's most meaningful. So that's one of my biggest is calendar integrity.
Love it. And what's the most recent book you've read?
The Art of Gathering. I loved it. And it was so interesting because I thought that it was going to be more, personal. I love parties. I love getting people together. And it was, but there's also an aspect of this from a professional perspective, from a meeting perspective, just fantastic insights and reminders for truly it is an art to have really quality gatherings. It's an art.
It is. I love this. I know this is rapid fire, but like, we've talked about how we sometimes obsess about the perfect napkins or the this or that, and nobody cares, but they care about the
Yes.
conversation.
They care about the experience.
That's what they remember. We can save ourselves a trip to the craft store or to the whatever, Pinterest. Okay, your favorite podcast right now.
Oh, my favorite one right now is the Marketing AI show. So, like, I love it because it's all about kind of the latest things that are happening in AI, but then it gets down to a marketing perspective that's just so, so invaluable. And with everything that's happening with AI, anything I can get my hands on, I'm just eating it up.
Love it too. And pirates or ninjas, who is tougher and why?
I think ninjas. Yeah, because I do think it's like it takes intention and it takes strategy to kind of really maneuver like a ninja does.
Okay, this is a curveball. You exude joy. You're a definition of joy. How would you advise someone who's looking for more joy in their life?
Boy, have a conversation with yourself all the time. That's really what I do. If I'm going negative Nelly in my head, I stop myself right there. And I have lots of talks with myself. Back to that Wizard of Oz Dorothy, it really is inside of us. And I know that may sound trite, but it's true. Just stop, ask yourself some questions, talk to yourself like you're a third person, and you really do have a choice. You really do. You can choose how you want that day to be.
Yes, and our brain, like, physiologically, we don't know the difference between different types of self-talk, right? So we might as well talk nicely because our brains don't really know the difference between reality and what we're thinking.
Yeah, and if that's not working, call somebody. Call somebody you trust. Like, if you can't get out of that cycle in your head, we all have those handful of people that you know they're gonna be honest with you, you know that they're gonna shoot it straight, and they know that they can lift you up too. So, don't always get inside of your head either. I think calling people and just doing a check-in with people is so helpful.
Great. I just had a thought. Do you ever debate a hairstyle change when you're going through something? Like,
Oh, always. That's usually a signal that something's happening when I wanna do something with my hair.
I just I just remembered I had this conversation with my best friend this weekend. I was explaining something. She said, "Whatever you do, just don't cut bangs right now." Like, because I love it, you know what I mean? So just not right now.
So just wait for that to pass, and then you can get the bangs.
Yeah, though that cannot coexist with this. So what's one word in 2024 that you will be focused on?
Gosh, a lot of thinking this time of year goes into the word. And for me, I think it's going to be about expansion. There is so many things happening professionally, personally, that go back to this notion of expansion, expanding my ideas. As I think about AI and what's coming, it is already, it's got my head just spinning on all of the different opportunities. Also, things that I need to completely think about that are different, unwinding years and years and years of experience even. So I think expansion of ideas, expansion of skill sets, also personally just expansion of how do I want to spend my time? What are the passions that I have? So yeah, it's expansion.
That's awesome. And you have a head start because you've already definitely.
I think, yeah, there's sort of a lot of expanding going on. Yeah. Just not of my waistline. I don't want expansion of my waistline.
That's fair. I think that, we we have to be able to be flexible though, because it's one of those things where we just when we're in that zone where we have that well-being and we feel that joy, I feel like I just show up differently even when it comes to my workout or it comes to eating right. Like it all is attached, right?
It is attached. Yeah. And it's chemical. We may think that it's not, and it's the touchy-feely stuff, but it's not. When you're taking care of yourself, there is a chemical that is all goodness. So it all goes together.
Amazing. And final question here, Miss Nicole, the scenario when you're thinking back where, you had this idea, what if we rebranded corporate? If you were to go back to yourself in that moment, because it wasn't a long time ago, but there's definitely been quite a bit of time since. What would you say to yourself, knowing everything that you've done and navigated in the interim?
Don't worry about having it all figured out in the beginning. Trust the process. You have told me this many times, Amy Jo, and maybe you don't have a map exactly of where things are headed, but you don't have to have everything figured out. And I think that is applicable to so many different things in our life. I want so badly to have the plan and what's the strategy and then what's the North Star and what are the outcomes. Absolutely, you need that in business and in work. But when it comes to kind of really changing and doing things differently, I think it's okay to say, look, just take that first step. You don't have to have it all figured out.
So good. Talk about a systemic why not now tool. I mean, it's absolutely true. Just get started.
Just get started. Just take that first step.
Yes. Thank you for doing the work that you do, for being a thought partner with me, and we get to play and try things and test and explore. It's truly a joy, a career highlight.
Thank you. I mean, we have created such a great playground to test, to learn, to implement, to try again. So I just appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Likewise.